We went through the main points about karma, focusing on negative or non-virtuous karma. And what the teachings say is that we probably have a lot of negative karma that we have accumulated in this lifetime, but on top of that, negative karma that we created in previous lives that hasn't been purified. It's still there. It's, all those seeds are sitting there in our mind, and if we don't do something to purify them, they're not going to just go away by themselves. They keep going with us life after life and are the cause for us to be reborn. In the case of negative karma, being reborn in situations where we have problems and suffering, difficulties, and then also when we're born in difficult situations and we're still an ordinary, deluded, unenlightened being, then we create more karma. We get into relationships with other people who are difficult to get along with, and we sometimes get arguments and yell at them and maybe even hurt them or kill them. So when we're born again in samsara, cyclic existence, then we have all this karma we've created in the past, we're still carrying with us, but then we accumulate new karma all the time. So they say, the amount of negative karma we have is quite huge. I don't know if you can believe that or not, but that's what the teachings say. And if you can believe that, if you can accept, karma, and I suppose it wouldn't be as urgent if you didn't believe in rebirth. If many people think this is the only life that we have, and we live 80, 90 years or so, and then we die, and that's it. So if you have that view, then it's not so urgent to purify karma. Of course, you don't want to have bad things happen to you in this lifetime, but once we die, then everything finishes. Our mind finishes, our karma finishes, everything finishes. We don't have to worry anymore. But according to Buddhism, it's not like that. Our mind goes on. Our mind doesn't die. Our body dies. Our body is left behind and cremated or buried or whatever, but mind continues, and with the mind is all the karma that we've created. So for people who accept that, believe in that, then it becomes quite urgent to purify, to clear away the karma in the mind, to avoid bad things happening, bad rebirths and suffering even in good rebirths, and also eventually to get out of this whole circle of existence, samsara. So for someone who does believe in rebirth and karma and so on, the need to purify is seen as quite urgent. So how to purify? So that we page 2 of the notes, letter B, purification with the 4 opponent powers. And I had already written this in, it's not in an old version of how to meditate. So if you have the old version, you don't have this in there, but it's in a newer version of how to meditate. The one that's got a kind of red and blue cover with a gold. I know, but there's different versions with different covers. There's been 3 or 4 different covers. So the newest one has, there's red and blue, and then there's this line drawing of Buddha in gold. That's the newest one. So in that version, you find this It's a new meditation that was included, explaining the 4 opponent powers. So I just took it right from that, so I didn't have to compose anything new. So I don't know if you've read it before today. I'm not going to go word for word through it, but just talk about the main points. So it said that if we want to purify our karma, we need to use these 4 opponent powers. And the 4 opponent powers are mainly mental states, mental attitudes that need to be developed. Not just, like prostrating with your body without doing anything with your mind. That doesn't work. So mainly it's our mind. We need to have certain states of mind. So these 4 opponent powers then are the things we need to develop in our mind to purify. And the way or the order that I'm explaining them here is first regret, and then reliance, and then remedy, and then resolve. But in some texts, they're explained in a different order. I don't know, if it matters so much which order you do them in, as long as you have all 4. So in some texts, the order is first reliance, and then remedy, and then regret, and resolve. So sometimes they put regret number 3. But to me, it just makes sense that you have it as number 1, because it's the thing that kind of motivates you to purify. We need to feel regret for what we've done. If we don't feel any regret, then we won't feel like there's any need to purify. So for me, it just makes sense logically to have it number 1. So regret, it says here, regret involves recognizing that certain actions we have done are negative because they harmed others and or ourselves, or both, because they will bring more problems later on, and because we were acting in an ego-centered, deluded way. So these are some reasons for why we might feel regret. If we recognize this was a bad thing to do, I hurt somebody else, I hurt other people, or I hurt myself, I did something damaging to myself. So those are considerations that could lead to regret. From the Buddhist point of view, on top of that is belief in karma. Because we might do some action that doesn't really hurt anybody else, and it may not hurt us in an obvious way, but it could still be negative because it could lead to problems later on in the future. So that could be another reason. If you believe in karma, if you can accept karma, then doing something negative will lead to problems in the future. Or it could also be because you recognize that what motivated you to act was something impure, like, selfishness, greed, anger, and so on. So these are some reasons that might lead you to feel regret. Regret isn't the same as guilt. So we need to differentiate this, because we talk a lot about guilt. And not only do we talk about it, we feel it. Guilt is a very common state of mind that actually, I think in some cases it may not be a bad thing. It might be the same as regret. Because if we did do something hurtful, for example, you got angry at somebody and you said some words that hurt that person's feeling, and you could really see on their face, that they were hurt by what you said. And then you feel bad about that bad feeling. You might call it guilt, you might call it regret. It's a little unclear how to draw the line between. So anyway, this is a case where you really did do something hurtful, and it's appropriate to feel regret about it. It's good to feel regret, right? So regret is said to be recognizing that you did something hurtful, something wrong, something bad, something unwise, unskillful. And that's a good thing. That's a positive thing. It's good to recognize that something we did was wrong. It shouldn't have been done. And the way I see the difference between regret and guilt, you might have different opinions about this, but I see guilt as something it's kind of like beating yourself up. I'm so bad, I'm so horrible. And it may be together with a sense of permanence. I'm this permanently bad person. I always be this way, always have been, always will be. I can't change. Does that make sense? Kind of sense of, I did this terrible thing and I can never change myself. I can never undo it. I'm going to feel terrible for the rest of my life. Something like that. It's kind of solid and permanent. I don't know if you would agree with that, but do you have some other explanation of guilt? What is guilt?
Polish Jews are experts. Number one in the world.
I know, but how would you describe that feeling?
Comes from huge self-cherishing, self-grasping.
But is it like...
Me, I did this, I feel like that, I.
Yeah.
Everything is about me.
Yeah, I'm
Not
so
about
bad.
what could I do better next time for her? How about that?
Yeah, I mean, that's another thing that I see a difference, because with regret, what we're trying to develop here, you don't just get overwhelmed by these bad feelings as if there's no way out and you're going to be this way forever. But you see there is a way out. There is something I can do. So it leads you to do something positive, something constructive, rather than just wallowing in this, oh, I'm bad, I'm horrible. Because I think sometimes people can feel guilt their whole life, Something they did in the earlier part of their life, they never get over it. They never stop feeling guilty.
It is sometimes, especially with Polish, I know it definitely.
Are you Polish too?
Yeah, I was born there.
Oh, okay.
I got it in my DNA. I call it kind of a tax. Like I feel guilty, then I pay my taxes, and I don't need to take responsibility or to improve. Or I feel guilty. That's enough. I mean, I raise my case.
I want to
I-
continue what you say.
I didn't...
But you didn't understand me?
What did you say about paying taxes?
Yeah, it is like a tax.
Tax?
T-A-X.
T-A-X, yeah.
You do it and then you
Pay
don't
your
have to.
dues.
Yeah.
Especially I'm paying my dues by feeling.
Yeah, I pay my dues.
Oh, so
I don't have to fix
feeling
anything.
guilty is a way of paying your taxes. Okay.
I pay my taxes.
It's like punishing yourself. Okay, this is my punishment. I did a bad thing, and now I'm punishing myself. Like that. No?
Everything is fine, you can rape again.
Yeah,
It gives you
legitimation.
legitimation for not repairing and
Yeah,
not correcting,
exactly.
not taking any.
And then you think you can do it again and again?
Oh, you say you can't do. What can I do?
What can I do?
This is how I am.
personality, that way
I can't change myself. I'm just like...
I'm lonely in the dark. What can I do? This is how my life is. This is.
Yeah.
By the way, you let the other person to feel guilty also.
Yeah.
That's true.
That's
It doesn't work without.
the best one. That's the best one.
You want to make sure the other person knows you're suffering. I'm suffering so much. Oh, I'm suffering. I'm suffering so much.
That's the best one.
There is something else in guilt. Very tricky. Because if I'm guilty, I'm not really that. Actually, I'm very good. But I'm guilty of that because this is not me. So I'm very guilty now. And this is also, it has a lot of vanity in that, okay?
I didn't quite get it. You're good.
I'm good.
You're not bad.
I never push anybody in the street. How did I do it? So instead of regretting, I'm taking the energy of, instead of regretting, I'm pulling it in towards myself, but upgrading me. I see it many times.
Instead of taking responsibility, because I can say, let's say I push somebody, so I can say I did something wrong. When I'm guilty, did I do something wrong? Good about it, but the real me doesn't do these things.
Hmm.
And it happens, so I feel bad, but I don't have to change anything because the real me doesn't
Yes.
do those things.
Hmm.
Yeah, it keeps the good-looking picture of
Yes.
myself.
Mhm.
So the negative energy goes out by saying this is not me. Oh, it was so terrible that I never do that. You know what happened to me? I pushed someone when I drove the car, but it's not me. I feel so bad. Normally I don't do it. I didn't sleep the whole night, and so I'm not really dealing with it because my real me is good. So I'm guilty as an accident, as an.
But there is another
Out of my control.
Maybe there
So
is
it's kind of a
another
split.
when
Yeah,
you
I am a
make
good
other
person, but this happened, but it's not really me.
But there is.
Yeah. Not taking responsibility.
The other level, I think, is when you blaming, when you, as they said, when you make somebody else feel guilty. So basically what happened is not only that you are naturally good, the other one is naturally not. And it's very interesting because it works very quick. And we have a lot in our
Culture.
Anyway, I guess guilt can take different forms, obviously. So we need to differentiate that, guilt, from regret. Because in fact, they don't even have a word for guilt in Tibetan language.
and for regret they do.
They do, yeah. Regret is... And regret itself, it's actually one of the mental factors, and it's said to be a changeable mental factor, meaning it could be positive, but it could also be negative. It's positive if you regret something you did that was wrong, pushing somebody in the street, okay? I regret doing that. I recognize that was a wrong thing to do. I'm sorry I did that. But on the other hand, if you do something good, like I gave 20 shekels to a beggar, and then afterwards, oh, I don't have enough money to buy a cup of coffee. Shoot, I shouldn't have given that money away. So that's regret for something good that you did, something positive that you did. That kind of regret is bad. Regret is positive if you feel regret for a bad thing you did. But if you feel regret for a good thing you did, it's negative. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So we have to be careful.
I think when you have less guilt, you're also blaming less. You less blame. You not blame less.
Yeah.
You blame less than you were before.
Yeah.
Than when you are guilty.
Yeah.
Because I think if you.
I mean, the way I understand it is, if I do something wrong, something bad, something hurtful, I need to acknowledge that, be honest, not try to justify it somehow or blame it on somebody else or get out of it somehow, but take responsibility. Okay, that happened. But you also don't want to go to the extent of, oh, I'm so bad, I'm so terrible, That's useless.
So they go together.
Because according to Buddhism, there is no permanent fixed I anyway. okay? What we are is just a, combination of mental and physical components changing all the time. Our body and our mind are constantly changing. And if I do something bad, it's because, excuse me, some kind of factors arose in my mind, that I had no control over. They come up in my mind. I wasn't able to manage. I wasn't able to control. I acted out something unwise, unskillful. And afterwards I recognized that was not a good thing to do. I hurt somebody, I upset somebody, I created bad karma. Okay, so I take responsibility, but I don't beat myself up and think I'm horrible, I'm bad, because there's no horrible, bad person. There's no permanent person anywhere in our aggregates, in our body and mind. But this event happened, and once it happened, it's gone, it stopped, it ceased. An imprint was left. That left an imprint, a karmic imprint on my mind. But I know that I can purify that. It's not like I'm doomed, I can't change this, I'm going to go to hell or whatever, there's nothing I can do about it. No, I can purify, I can change this. And I'm going to do something to purify this, to change this. So that's the feeling of regret. And they say that it's similar to the way we would feel if we accidentally ate poison. So let's say you go to a restaurant and you have a meal, you enjoy yourself, you go home, you turn on the TV, you're watching the news, and on the news they say, 2 people were taken to the hospital tonight after eating at such and such restaurant. And you realize, oh my God, I ate there too. And these people are very sick, they have food poisoning, and they suspect, the food was poisonous, and you ate that food too. Okay, so how would you feel? Would you feel guilty? I mean, you didn't know you did what was going on.
But
you would feel.
In Israel, I know people that were, for example, in a terrorist attack, and they were saved, and the girl next died, and that's a big thing, and that people feel very guilty. How come you're standing there? I know personally, and so with the restaurant, it's more easy to say, oh no, I was just lucky.
No, they call that survivor guilt. It happens in the war as well. If you're a soldier, your buddy, your mate gets killed and you survive, you can feel guilty. Why him and not me? Or a car accident, lots of situations like that, survivor guilt. And that's also unreasonable. But anyway, this thing about the restaurant. So they say what you would feel in that situation was you'd feel some, I wish I hadn't gone there and eaten that food. But you would also take yourself to the hospital right away. You would do something about it. You wouldn't just sit home and beat yourself up because you ate that food, right? That would be stupid. That wouldn't make any sense. What you should do is get down to the hospital, get down to the emergency room and tell them, I think I might have food poisoning. Please clean me out, get rid of this stuff that I ate tonight. So they say the feeling of regret is like that. We realize we did something that was unwise, unskillful, and if we don't do something about it, we will suffer. Bad things will happen to us. And this is again based on one's understanding of karma, one's acceptance of karma. I did this bad thing, I left this imprint on my mind. If I don't clear it away, purify it, get rid of it, I'm going to experience some bad results in the future. So regret motivates us to do something, to act, to do something positive and constructive, i.e. purification. Does that make sense? Whereas guilt is just sitting around and feeling, I'm bad, I'm horrible, beat, not doing anything constructive. Does that make sense? Who?
she's Rita,
Yeah.
teacher, and she spoke about how people see, for example, in India, like an old woman on the road, and she's dirty and she's skinny, and you feel guilty. And she had a whole thing around it. I feel guilty. How come? It's not about you. Not everything is about you. So I think it's so tricky.
Yeah. Now it's another kind of guilt, that you are doing better than somebody else.
Yeah.
Yeah. I feel that way sometimes when I'm about to sit down and eat a meal, and I think about all the people who are hungry, who don't have food to eat. You know, like, it's kind of guilt. It's unreasonable. Actually, Lama Yeshe talked about this. So I guess some students told him that they felt that way, and he said, "This is ridiculous." I mean, it's not doing anybody any good. You can't share your food with all the hungry people in the world, right? You can't get rid of all the hunger in the world. But on the other hand, if you eat this food with a good motivation, with altruistic motivation, I want to make myself strong and healthy so I can help others as much as I can, and I can continue on this spiritual path and eventually become a Buddha and relieve the suffering of others. So you can transform the whole act of eating into something positive, the part of the path. Anyway. But yeah, I found this article on the internet about guilt, and it mentioned a number of different kinds of guilt, or different circumstances where we might feel guilty. And one is, you know, feeling guilty even though we haven't done anything, right? Sometimes you could feel guilty even though there's really nothing you have done wrong. Maybe you just imagine that you did something wrong. You imagine somebody's angry at you. Yeah, but if you check, you did I do anything wrong? No, I didn't. So why am I feeling guilty?
That is like violence that you are.
Yeah, it's self-blame. So what I always think is, if you are feeling guilty, it's good to check. Do have I done something? Have I done something wrong? Something that I should regret? Something I should apologize for? Do purification about? And you might find it's just your imagination. You didn't actually do anything wrong. Also, sometimes people can make us feel guilty, as Ofer was saying, I didn't really do anything wrong, but that person wants me to feel guilty. So they're talking to me in a way, or pushing me in a way to make me feel guilty, even though there's no reason for it. So it's always good to check if there's a reason, a good reason, a valid reason for feeling regret or not. Okay, the second power is reliance. Although in some cases this is explained as the first one. So the idea of reliance, why they use this word reliance, is it says when we fall down on the ground, we rely on the ground to get up again. So you lean on the ground to stand up again, get yourself back on your feet. Similarly, when we do something negative, it's either in relation to pure beings, such as the Buddha or our spiritual teacher. So in some cases, we do something negative to our teacher, or to the Buddha, to the Dharma, to the Sangha. So those could be one type of object in relation to which we do negative things. Or it could be in relation to ordinary sentient beings. That's probably most of the cases of our negative actions, just our family and our friends and people in the street and so on. So just ordinary beings. So in order to purify our negative karma, we need to recall and rely upon those two objects. So we rely on them, we lean on them to get ourselves back on our feet in a way. Okay, so with regard to the pure beings, the Buddha, Dharma, Sangha, and teachers and so on, we rely on the three jewels, Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. So we take refuge. Okay, so one part of reliance means taking refuge in the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. Then for other beings, the way we rely on them is by renewing our altruism, our compassion, our wish to help and not harm others. Okay, so they say that for this power of reliance, it involves taking refuge in the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, or renewing, you could say renewing your refuge, remembering, I want to follow the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. Take them as my guides. And we generate bodhicitta. I want to help all living beings and not hurt them, not harm them. So I think of it as sort of putting ourselves back on track, back on the path that we want to follow. Because when we do something negative, it's a bit like falling off the path, going off the path in another direction, or falling down. So we want to get ourselves back on our feet, back on our path, going in the direction we want to go. Now, this is in the Buddhist context. This is how it's explained in Buddhism for a Buddhist. But because sometimes I'm explaining these to people who are not necessarily Buddhist, so I say that if you're not a Buddhist and you don't take refuge in the three jewels, you might have some other objects of refuge. For example, if you're a Christian, then it would be God, Jesus. If you're a Muslim, it would be Allah, Muhammad. If you're a Jew, again, it would be God. Okay, so if you follow another religion, another spiritual tradition, there's some objects that you take refuge in, even if they don't use that word refuge, but it's like the object of your devotion, your faith, someone you're taking guidance from. So you would just renew your devotion to that object. And then for people who aren't religious, who aren't following any religion or spiritual tradition, you could do this in a more psychological way. Because I think everybody has certain values that they feel are important to them. Like, I want to be a good person. I want to be honest. Okay, it's not because of a religion, but it's just your own personal principles, your personal values. It's something you feel very strongly about. Okay, but then if you go against that, you act dishonestly or unkindly. It's like you've gone against your values. You've gone against your principles. Okay, so if you're that kind of person, then this power of reliance would just be reminding yourself of your values, renewing your commitment to those values. So that's how somebody who's not a Buddhist could still use this power. Does that make sense? But in the context of Buddhism, for example, we'll do a practice of Vajrasattva later. There's the prayer of refuge, taking refuge and generating bodhicitta. So that would be the power of reliance. Then the third is the power of remedy. This is doing something positive to counteract the negative energy we've created, to sort of balance things out. And it said that in general, any positive action can be used to purify negative karma. But certain practices are especially powerful remedies. And then there are these 6 practices that are recommended. The first one is reciting the names of Buddhas. So this is actually what we do when we do the practice of the 35 Buddhas, which we'll look at later, not today, maybe next time. So in that practice, there are these 35 Buddhas, and ideally you learn the names by heart in English or whatever language you want. And then you're reciting those names while prostrating to them and visualizing them in front of you. So just reciting the names of the Buddhas is said to be very powerful. And you don't have to do all 35. You can do just Shakyamuni Buddha. I'll write it on the board later. But it said that reciting the name of Shakyamuni Buddha, in Tibetan it's Lama Tumba Chomdene, Deshan Jabada Chomba Yang Tamba Zope Sangye, Palgyawa Shakya Tupala Chagsalo. It's kind of a long name. But anyway, that's one name. Well, it's lots of epithets, lots of kind of it's more than just a name. It's a lot of adjectives. You know, you are this, you are that, and so on and so forth. But anyway, I can give it to you later. But anyway, it's Lama Zopa Rinpoche has said that one recitation of that purifies 800 billion eons of negative karma. I know, it's hard to believe. No, I think you have to say it yourself. You have to say it yourself. I mean, hearing it, of course, there's some benefit in hearing it, but reciting it.
We have to pronounce it correctly, otherwise we might get it all wrong.
So each of the 35 Buddhas is similar. You know, reciting their names purifies all this negative karma. Did you have your hand up? Shukla?
Well, yeah, there's a beautiful kit on FPMT, FPMT store for the practice of the 35 Buddhas, including all the recitations. Some nun is singing them, and you get a nice booklet and really pack, you know what to do and how to do, and all the names are spelled out, and then you hear them on a CD or
Yeah, we're going to be looking at this practice as we go along in the next couple of sessions, looking specifically. But I had mentioned, I told Tal that they have a sale on this book. It's just the book, not the CD, but it's you can get it from FPMT Shop, the practice of prostrations of the 35 Buddhas. So there's a booklet with all this information, the practice, the names, how many eons of negative karma gets purified by reciting each name, and so on, and how to do prostrations with a drawing and so on. So you can get that book from the FPMT Shop. Okay, number 2, reciting mantras. So it's said that you can do any mantra. Om Mani Padme Hum, Buddha's mantra. So any mantra can be used to purify, but the Vajrasattva mantra is particularly recommended for purification. That's what that practice is all about. This is actually Vajrasattva here on the wall, this tanka. So that's the one that's really recommended to purify. Number 3 is reciting scriptures. So for example, reading the Heart Sutra. That's a short sutra. You can read it in 5 minutes or something. There's longer sutras, the Diamond Sutra, the Sutra of Golden Light, and so on and so forth. So reading sutras, sacred words of the Buddha, is also a way of purifying, or it's a remedy. Number 4 is making images of enlightened beings, like tsatsas. Okay, so these little clay images. Maybe also if...
Then you have to give them away. Let's say you make 100,000 tsatsas.
Yeah, this is a challenge. I mean, some centers actually have tsatsa houses, little houses where you can put all your tsatsas, and they just get filled up with tsatsas. But I was thinking another thing would be to make donations, because for example, sometimes Lama Zopa Rinpoche will say to a center, oh, you need to make a statue of Maitreya Buddha or Shakyamuni Buddha or Medicine Buddha or whatever, and they need to make this big statue, and they need a lot of money. So you can make a donation to that, and that's also, you know, you're not making the statue yourself, but you're contributing to it. So that would be a way of doing this one. Now, number 5, meditating on emptiness. That's actually the best one. They say that the thing that really purifies karma is understanding emptiness, although it's not easy to understand. But even trying to understand it, studying it, thinking about it, reading about it, meditating on it, that is the number 1 thing. And it's actually the realization. It's not just thinking about it, but when you get the realization of emptiness, your mind realizes it, experiences it, sees it, that is the thing that really knocks out karma, eliminates karma. And then number 6, making offerings to Buddhas or stupas. So many people will have an altar in their home, and every day you can make offerings, water bowl offerings, incense, flowers, fruits, and so on. So those are the 6 recommended practices. But you can also just do anything that's virtuous, that's positive, that's beneficial. So in the Tibetan tradition, the typical practices are the Vajrasattva mantra, the 35 Buddha practice, and so on. And you could also be creative and do volunteer work, making donations to charity. Saving lives is a good thing to do to counteract the karma of killing. So in Buddhist countries, some Western people do this as well. You can buy animals that are going to be killed and set them free. In some places it's hard to do that, but one thing people do sometimes is, if there's a place where people like to fish, you can get live crickets or worms.
Mary and Lisa lead once a month a special liberation of
Oh, you do? You do animal
We
liberation?
all did it once.
Oh, that's a nice thing to do, yeah.
Feed the crickets.
In Singapore, when I was living in Singapore, they have a big market. And there you can buy lots of live animals, fish, because the Chinese people like their meat fresh. So the animals are still alive in the market, and then sometimes they get killed right there in the market. So we go in and buy fish. Oh, you can buy all kinds of things. Anyway, so it's an easy place to do animal liberation. And so that's a particularly good thing to do. You're benefiting those beings, giving them a chance to live and not have to die. And it's a way to purify your karma, especially the karma of killing. There was a story I heard about this woman in Canada who had cancer, and she'd gone through all kinds of treatments to, try to get rid of the cancer. Nothing was working. And then somehow somebody told her about Lama Zopa Rinpoche, so she wrote to him, and he advised her to liberate animals, and maybe some other things as well, but animal liberation was one of the things. And it seems she had a lot of money, so she was able to buy lots of animals, including big ones like cows, And of course, if you buy that kind of animal, you have to put them somewhere. But there are often places, there are people who have really good hearts, and they have animal sanctuaries where you can... Yeah. So she did lots of this, lots of animals, and her cancer disappeared. The doctors were amazed. They didn't think she would survive. So it can be quite powerful. But in addition to doing these things, like practice things, it's also good to apologize. That isn't always mentioned. In fact, it's usually not mentioned, but it makes sense. If you've hurt somebody's feelings or whatever, caused suffering to somebody else, it's good to speak to them and express your regret, your sorrow, try to make amends somehow. Even if they don't accept your forgiveness, if they still are angry, it doesn't matter. You have at least offered your apology, and that's good enough. That's a good thing to do. Maybe they'll change later. Maybe they'll accept it later. Okay, and then number 4 is resolve. And this means making a a kind of promise or pledge to not do this action again. And you need to do this in a skillful way, because with certain actions, like if you committed a murder, and you feel that you can not do that again, then you can make that kind of promise. I am never going to do that again. On the other hand, if it's some action that you probably would do again, like gossiping, idle talk. So if you have that habit, you can't just completely stop right away, but they say you can make a promise for a short period of time, 5 minutes. For the next 5 minutes, I will not do that. I mean, that's... It's like it's something you do on your own. You do it on your own. Okay, so you can make a short-term promise, and then gradually you can make it longer, and one day. That's one of the benefits of doing the one-day precepts. I don't know if you've done that before, but there's this practice of taking 8 precepts for 24 hours. Yeah, so it's just a way of getting used to a more virtuous, more ethical life. And the more you get used to it, it starts to become more natural and habitual. And maybe eventually you get to the point where you don't even want to do those things anymore. You're able to just give it up. So you have to use your intelligence and make a promise that you can keep, or that's realistic for you to be able to keep. Does that make sense? Okay, then down at the bottom, letter C, how the 4 opponent powers counteract the 4 types of karmic result. So remember on the top of page 2, we had the 4 results of karma. So the 4 opponent powers overcome those. So the first, the power of regret, overcomes the result similar to the cause in terms of experience. So that means, having other people do to you that thing that you yourself did. Then reliance, relying on, like in the case of Buddhism, the 3 jewels, that overcomes environmental results, being born in a place where you have certain unpleasant conditions. Remedy overcomes the fully ripened result. That's the rebirth that we would take. So doing this virtuous karma, creating virtuous karma, virtuous merit, good things, that will stop that result from happening. And then resolve, result similar to the cause in terms of action. I think that's easy to see, because the result similar to the cause in terms of action means having the tendency to do the action again and again and again. So if you have this strong determination, resolve to stop it, to not do it again, that will stop that result. Does this seem too complicated? Anyway, I thought that today maybe we could have a break first, and then we can do together this practice of Vajrasattva. Now, there's different versions of Vajrasattva, how Vajrasattva looks. It's not always the same. This is one version. So he's always white. That's one thing that's standard. Color is white and youthful and very sort of beautiful, with all these ornaments and so on. But in this case, the way he's sitting with his legs in the Vajra posture, And then he's holding a vajra in his right hand like this, in front of his heart. And the bell is, he's holding a bell with his left hand kind of resting on his lap. You probably can't see it very well, but you can go and look at it during the break. So that's one version. Another version, the way it's described in this practice, is that his hands are crossed like this in front of his heart, holding a vajra in the right hand and a bell in the left. So like this. And there's another version of Vajrasattva called Haruka Vajrasattva, where Vajrasattva has a consort. And when Lama Yeshe first gave this initiation to students, and we started this tradition of having Vajrasattva group retreats of Vajrasattva, that's the version that he gave, Vajrasattva with a consort.
What's it called? I don't know the word.
Consort, partner.
Ah,
You've seen pictures like that probably, yeah. So this one here we're doing doesn't have a consort. It's just single Vajrasattva with hands like this. So the practice involves visualizing Vajrasattva appear above the head. And you don't have to have an initiation to do this practice, because you're not visualizing yourself as Vajrasattva. So anybody can do this. So Vajrasattva is visualized in the space above our head. And I'm just roughly telling you what we're going to do, and then we'll have a break, and we'll do it after the break. And then we take refuge, do the prayer of refuge and bodhicitta. So that's the power of reliance. Okay. Then next is the power of regret, where we think about, we bring to mind the things that we want to purify. What kind of karma have we created that we want to purify? And there's a verse here that we can read together that, remember, just bringing to mind negative karma we've created from past lives as well. So ideally, we really generate this feeling of regret. Not guilt, again. Doesn't mean, oh, I'm bad, I'm horrible, oh, I'm hopeless. But okay, I've done this stuff, I'm sorry, I realize it was wrong, and now I want to purify it. And then for the power of remedy, mainly it involves reciting the mantra. And I thought we could do the 100-syllable mantra together, maybe 7 times, so you can get used to that. And then we can just continue silently using the short mantra, Om Vajrasattva Hum. I thought the short mantra was in here. Oh yeah, bottom of page 7 is the short Vajrasattva mantra, Om Vajrasattva Hum. But, very short. But they say it's good to do the long one, the 100-syllable. It's sometimes called the 100-syllable mantra. There's also different versions of the Vajrasattva mantra. There's a few different versions of it. So anyway, we'll just do this one here. So while reciting the mantra, you imagine that from the heart of Vajrasattva above your head, there's a moon disk, and in the middle of the moon disk is a hum, the letter hum, and the mantra is around the edge of the moon disk. And then light and nectar flowing down from that, coming into the crown of your head and filling your body, and then kind of washing out all your bad karma, your whatever. You can also think of sickness and I don't know, it says also afflictions caused by spirits. Tibetans say, spirits can cause problems for us. So you imagine all this stuff going out, and you can imagine it going out through all the openings of your body. They say even the pores of our body, so it's just going out. And our nose and our ears and our lower orifices. So all this gunk, yucky stuff is going out. And you can imagine it just sinking into the earth and disappearing there. So I just think I'm just getting washed out. All that gunk is getting washed out. Maybe you could think of something like, I don't know, a tube or something made of glass. It's all dirty inside. And when you run water through it, you know, the water just cleans out all the gunk, all the yuck, all the stuff. And then it's really clean afterwards.
You think generally, or you need to think about what specific you purify?
It's good to think about specific things, but
But then you don't know why it's ripened to be that, right?
you don't know what?
What made it ripe to be that? Let's say you lose money, okay, all the time, for example.
You what?
For example, you lost your home, you lose money,
Yeah.
you have many things, okay? You have a car accident, you have whatever, okay? So when you're doing the purification, because you feel like things going wrong, and you want to purify the karma, so how do you reverse it? I understand
Well-
when I'm doing something, when I'm hurting somebody, I understand.
Yeah.
When I'm doing something active, but when something happens to me that is basically a ripened karma,
And you don't know
how
what.
do I reverse it?
Yeah. Well, for that kind of thing, you can just think in general. Whatever bad things I did in the past,
Okay.
those I can't remember, those that were from past lives, which I can't remember. You just think in general, all of those things that I did. I mean, if you're sick, if you're experiencing sickness, then if you know something about karma, you could think, well, this could be because of killing, because of, harming the lives of others, giving poison to others and making them sick. So that could be something I did in a past life, and that's why I'm experiencing sickness. So you can just kind of guess, things that you might have done, and then feel regret for those. And so you bring to mind the things you can remember, you do know that you've done, you feel regret for, and then you can think all the rest, all the other negative things that I've done, but I don't remember, I feel regret for them, and I want them purified too. And there's different visualizations that you can do while purifying. We'll just do the simple one, the first one that I mentioned, just getting all that goes out. And there's an additional visualization you can do. I'll just mention it because I like it, but you might find it weird. They say you can imagine the earth under you opening up, and down there is this sort of monster being. They actually say it's Yama, the Lord of Death. I don't know if you've heard of him, but he looks kind of really fierce. And he's got his mouth wide open, huh?
We saw him when we learned 12 links.
You saw him.
We saw
Yeah, that's right. That drawing of the Wheel of Life. He's the one who's holding it. Yeah, so he looks pretty fierce. And so he's down there. He's got his mouth open. And all this negative stuff goes into his mouth. But for him, it's like delicious. It's delicious ice cream or, chocolate cake, or he loves it, It's like dessert. He's really happy, yeah? And then when you've finished, so it goes into him and he's happy, enjoying it and so on. And then when you've finished, you imagine his mouth closes and then it's sealed. You can imagine either a double dorji or a dharma wheel that's kind of sealing his mouth. And then the earth closes up. So they say doing that visualization is good to clear away any obstacles to our life that we might have, and ensuring that we live longer. And I just like it for me, because it's like, okay, that yucky stuff is useful for somebody. Somebody's injured. We want to make him happy. We want to make him happy so that he doesn't take us away before we're ready, something like that. So that's optional. If you want to do that, you can. Otherwise, just imagine it sinking into the earth and disappearing. And then at the end, when we finish, I say it's good to imagine your whole body is like crystal, clean and clear, pure, like that. And then at the end is the power of resolve. So there you can just make your promise. Tu Vajrasattva, I promise that I will not do those actions again, and so on. So that's just roughly what's involved. And then dedication of the merit at the end. So my suggestion is that we have a break. Another 10-minute, 15-minute break. Yeah, 15-minute break. And during the break, if you want, you can start thinking about things that you've done that you'd like to purify. Well, why not? And maybe write them down, because then you really have something substantial that you can do the practice with. Not everything, but just some things. Whatever's prominent in your mind, bring that to mind. Okay, so let's have a break.